Ladies and gentlemen, Forrest over here, and welcome back to another reading live stream today. Tonight, I will be doing a different book because of how small this book literally is. It's about a little bit smaller than Because of When Nipsey was, and you guys seen how long it took for me to read that book. When I did my one-time reading of it, my one-night only reading of it, yeah, that was fun. For this one, we'll be doing the same thing here with this book because, again, it's not that big of a book. And I figured, take a little break from the teen slash adult oriented stuff that is contained inside this book. And trust me when I say it's going to get a lot crazier as we go along with this book over here. I know, I've read it. Um, but anyway, so let's go ahead and just get started. I do got my cup of tea there, in case I get a little bit tired at some point. So, without further ado, this is Spy Kids Adventures, book number 5, because I'm not going to try to hunt down every single book of this series in book format. Just be happy that I got at least one of these things, and it's very fitting because it involves back-to-school things going on here. So yeah, here we go. This was Spy Kids Adventures, Book 5, Mall of the Universe, based on the characters by Robert Rodriguez, written by Elizabeth Leonard. This book was released in 2003. So about 21 years ago, actually. That's going to make me feel old. I also should say there's going to be some 2000s lingo in this book, so it's probably going to be kind of cringy, but it is what it is. Anyway. Chapter 1. Judy Cortez ran backward across the grass in front of his family's cliff-top home. I got it, he called. It was the frisbee that Judy's older sister had just flown across the lawn. Judy backed up some more, his arms outstretched, waiting for the frisbee to float down to him. He waited and waited. But the frisbee kept flying. That's when Judy noticed a little plume of fire sputtering out of the disc, and when he glanced at his sister, he saw that she was wiggling the joystick of a tiny remote control device. You slipped in a jet frisbee? Judy called out. Nice trick, Carmen, but guess what? What? Carmen called back, giggling as she steered the jet frisbee over a gnarled oak tree. I have a trick up my sock, too, Judy declared. The correct phrase is trick up my sleeve, dork, Carmen replied. Not this time, Judy announced. He bent over and rolled his sweat socks down to his sneakers. Strapped to each ankle were 2 tiny rockets. With the tap of a button, each rocket burst into life. Shooting jets of air over his heels, they catapulted Judy into the sky. By now, Carmen had steered the jet frisbee over their house. Judy flew up over the roof, did a flashy loop-de-loop, and snatched the jet frisbee out of the air. Then he zinged it back to his sister on the ground and flew to the oak tree, landing neatly on a branch. He turned off his ankle jets and shot Carmen a smug look. Just remember, for every one of your spy gadgets, I have an equal and opposite spy gadget, Judy said to his sister. I got your number. Duh, Carmen said, tossing the frisbee on the grass and rolling her brown eyes at her bro. We live in the same house and we're spy partners. Of course you have my number. Judy hopped out from the oak branch and ambled over to Carmen. They both sprawled on the grass and wiped the beads of sweat off their foreheads. Correction, Judy said. We're off duty, spy partners. We have an entire week of summer left. A whole blissful week of frisbee playing and tadpole catching and canoeing and stuff before OSS school starts. The OSS was the top secret government agency where Carmen and Junie worked, and they worked plenty hard. Between the two of them, Carmen and Junie spoke 14 languages. In their basement workout room, they trained every day, homing their kung fu and coming to fight off any foe. And they were constantly upgrading their arsenal of futuristic spy gadgets. But the spy kids weren't total workaholics. After all, they were spy kids. Carmen was 12 and Junie was 10. They saved the world on a regular basis, but they still deserved a little summer vacation. Hence the sunshiny afternoon of jet frisbee and lolling in the grass. A whole week before you have to think about school, Judy repeated happily. The only thing that can make this moment any better would be a big drippy bubblegum ice cream cone. Carmen? Judy? Judy lifted his head off the grass to see their mom poking her head through their back door. As usual, Mom's green eyes were crinkled into a sweet smile. Judy propped himself up on his elbows and looked at his mother hopefully. Had she read his mind? Did she come bearing ice cream? Come on in, kids, Mom called. For a snack? Judy asked. Sure, Mom agreed. Just as soon as you try on your school uniforms and fall clothes. You know, just one more week and it's back to the books. And you guys are looking awfully lanky. I'm worried your clothes aren't going to fit. Carmen and Judy exchanged baleful glances. So much for not thinking about school, Carmen sighed. Then she and Judy pulled themselves to their feet. Even if they did complain a little, the truth was the spy kids weren't tremendously bummed about going back to school. After all, school, and everything else in their lives, was much cooler now that they were spies. A few years earlier, life hadn't been nearly as exciting. Judy's classmates had teased him because he was timid and sweaty-palmed. In fact, he'd been so scared his damp hands had broken out in warts. Blech. Literally, that's what it says in the book. Blech. Meanwhile, Carmen had been so restless she'd spent a lot of time moping around the house, dreaming of running away to far-off lands. She never told her parents about her discontentment. She didn't want to hurt their feelings. Besides, Carmen had thought her folks would never understand her craving for adventure. After all, they were as safe as parents could be. They worked at home as computer consultants. Mom cooked practical dinners, and Dad wore sensible spectacles. Boring! But one fateful day, Carmen and Judy found out the truth. Their parents were anything but boring. In fact, once upon a time, they'd been cutthroat international super spies. But then they'd met, fallen in love, and gotten married. And when Carmen and Judy were born, Ingrid and Gregorio had dropped out of the dangerous spy biz. Then one day, the OSS contacted Ingrid and Gregorio for one last mission. Unable to resist the adventure, the parents went off to save the world. Their mission was a breeze, until they were captured. That's when Carmen and Judy had become spies themselves and swooped in to save their parents' butts. In case you don't know what this is referring to, it's referring to the first book, the first Spy Kids movie that came out in 2000. I think it was 2001 or 2002, I believe. It may have been 2000 as well. I'm not sure, but yeah, I do remember those movies, particularly 1, 2, and 3. I've never seen the fourth one. I don't even know if I want to watch the fourth one, but I do remember those three movies in particular. Now all four Cortezes spied for the OSS together. They were a lot happier too, even when they had to contend with tedious stuff like trying on back-to-school clothes. Judy went to his room and pulled his school uniform out of the closet. He tugged the outfit on and went to the kitchen where Mom and Carmen were already waiting. They took one glance at him and burst out laughing. What? Judy demanded. He scowled and scratched a mosquito bite on his wrist, which was hidden well below the cuff of his burgundy blazer. So, it's a little snug. Just a little, Carmen giggled, pointing at her brother. Your sleeves are 3 inches too short. Your shorts look like a bathing suit, and you can't even button your jacket over that roly-poly belly. Judy glared at Carmen. I said Cartman from South Park. What? Speaking of which, I was actually wearing this South Park hat right there, and there's Cartman right there. Funny how I'm saying Cartman when I meant to say Carmen. Anyway. Oh, hold on a second. I'm noticing this. I need to do that. There we go. Because the more that TV stays on that screen, the less I have to put up with it. So that way, it don't turn on the music channel on Vivo on the TV and thus try to get me a copyright claim, motherfuckers. Yeah. Alright, there you go. Anyway. Judy glared at Carmen. Right back at ya, he accused. As if, Carmen said, slimming a hand over her slim, almost teenage waist. My uniform still fits. What about the shoes, Bigfoot? Judy pointed out. Carmen frowned and grabbed her school shoes off a kitchen chair. She thrust one foot into a shoe. It went as far as her third toe. Just as I thought, Mom said. You kids sprouted like beanstalks this summer. We better get you some new clothes. And you know what that means. Carmen jumped up and down, clapping her hands together. Shopping! She cried. Yes! No! Judy yelled. Maybe so. A rumbly, Spanish accented voice in the kitchen door. What are you kids arguing about now? The kids spun around. Their dad had sneaked up behind them. He was carrying his laptop in one hand and a bottle of suntan lotion in the other. I was just doing a little decryption work on the sun. I was just doing a little decryption work on the sun deck, he said. But the sound of my sweet little spies getting along so nicely lured me into the kitchen. Ha ha, very funny, Dad, Carmen said. Judy doesn't want to go to school clothes shopping, of course. Ah, I don't blame you, son, Dad said with a grimace. You could grow gray hair waiting for a woman to decide between this black shoe and that black shoe. It's torture. Really, Gregorio? Mom said, fixing Dad with a mischievous glare. Torture? Like the torture you endured when you were captured by a villain during our spy mission last week? Oh, wait a minute. That baddie didn't have a chance to torture you because I rescued you first. Very good point, my dear, Dad said quickly. Then he murmured to Junie, Forget I said anything. Your mother, she is a very clever lady. Believe me, I know, Junie said. Then his face brightened. He had an idea. Tucking off his too-tight blazer, Junie trotted over to the family computer, the one they used to surf the web, on the kitchen desk. You know what they say, he said, booting up the computer. Like mother, like son. I have a clever idea of my own. One that'll get us all out of this shopping trip. Junie, Mom chided him. Just wait till you see this awesome sight before you say anything, Junie begged. So Mom and Carmen folded their arms over their chests and waited as Junie pointed and clicked his way to a particular website. Suddenly, the computer screen erupted with the crazy colors, push-in cartoon shopping carts, and bright dollar bills. Jingly music echoed out. Hold on a second. Alright, sorry about that. As we were saying, jingly music echoed out of the speakers. Then a man's face popped up in the center of the screen. He had slick yellow overstyled hair, a jutting jaw with a cleft chin, and sparkly blue eyes. He began rattling off his lightning-fast sales pitch. Something Something that's nices and nices? He proposed. How about some mices? The dogs that are the nicest? Sure, cures for your vice. Cures for your vices. Buy them all for low prices at whoppershopper.com. Mom gave Judy a dry look. Nice try, sweetie, she said. But we're going to the real mall. But, but, look how cool this site is, Judy protested. No dressing rooms. No tromping around from store to store. And you can still try on stuff. See? Judy hit a few computer keys. Then he jumped out of his chair and onto a hexagonal pad on the floor next to the desk. Careful with that teleportation pad, Dad cautioned his son. You know your Uncle Machete made it. You don't want to end up beaming yourself to China. Carmen and Judy giggled. Dad's brother, Machete Cortez, was the most creative gadget inventor in the history of the OSS. But sometimes Uncle Machete was a little too creative. His watermelon-seeded blowgun, for instance, worked fine, if you didn't mind the flatulent noises it made with every shot. His Camellia candy helped the kids blend seamlessly into an environment. Unfortunately, it also tasted like freeze-dried lizards. And his teleportation pad? Well, it was still a bit crude, but at the moment Judy had confidence. I'm not going anywhere, he assured his dad. That's the point. The clothes come to you. And he was right. Just then, an electronic voice rang out from whoppershopper.com. Now teleporting, outfit number 256, the Radical Slate Kid. A flash of light filled the kitchen. When the Cortezes blinked the spots out of their eyes, Judy was no longer wearing his super snug school uniform. Instead, he was dressed in the baggiest, most billowing cargo pants ever, and the slippiest, most garishly colored t-shirt ever. On one foot was a green suede sneaker, size 12. On the other was a red high top, size 6. Okay, so maybe there are still a few glitches in the system, Judy said, shrugging at his awestruck family. But that's okay, we can tweak it. This outfit isn't real, it's virtual. You can try on clothes without really trying them on. It brings a whole new meaning to the term mix and match, Mom said with a laugh. I'm sorry, sweetie, but we really need to get you clothes that fit, and that means we're going to the mall. Even I have to agree with your mother on that one, Dad said, clapping on an apologetic hand on Judy's shoulder. No Cortez can go out in public looking this uncool. Woohoo! Carmen cried. She headed for the kitchen door. Time to shop till we drop. I'm going to pour on some glittery eyeshadow before we go. That's terrible, but I'm not doing it how I originally did it before. Hold your horses, shop girl, Judy cried gleefully. That's the OSS alarm. It's mission time. And you know what that means. We won't be going anywhere near a mall today. Suddenly, Judy lurched forward. Whoa! He yelled. Something had forced him off the teleportation pad. When he found his balance, he spun around. The virtual image of a broad-shouldered, clutch-chinned man had taken his place on the pad. Mr. Devlin! Judy cried. Hello, Devlin said with a wave to the family. He was the head of the OSS and a very important man, which was why Judy and Carmen had to work extra hard to stifle their giggles at his appearance. Now that he was standing on the teleportation pad instead of Judy, he was wearing Judy's ridiculous Slater Kid outfit. 2 different shoes and all. Luckily, Devlin himself didn't notice his bright and baggy getup. He was too intent on giving the spy family their next mission. Cortezes, he announced, break out your credit cards. You're going to the mall. Oh yes, the one thing Judy didn't want to do. Chapter 2. We're going where? Junie gasped. His boss grinned. The mall, Devlin said. Kids love the mall. So I figured you wouldn't mind counting your summer vacation a little short for this mission. Well, Judy began, but Carmen cut him off with an elbow to the ribs. We don't mind at all, Mr. Devlin, she blurted. The OSS comes first, of course. Now you were saying, about the mall? Carmen's eyes glittered with excitement. A mission at the mall. This was a dream come true. Well, this isn't just any mall, Devlin explained. We're sending you to the mall of the universe. Get out! Carmen cried in delight. Then she remembered that she was addressing the head of the OSS. I mean, get out, sir. At ease, spy kid, Devlin said with one rakish wink. I take it you heard of the Mall of the Universe, then. What teenager hasn't? It's the world's largest mall, covering 8 square miles of North Dakota flatlands. This mall has got it all. An indoor amusement park and water slide, countless food courts and movie theaters, a skateboarding ramp, glass people movers on monorails, a rock climbing wall, and, oh, I almost forgot, hundreds and hundreds of stores. So what's our mission? Tracking down a super shoplifter? Judy asked with an arched eyebrow. What do you take? Jewels? Clothes? The special recipe for the Whopper? Try the entire mall, Devlin said with a sigh. What? The spy family gasped. Devlin, my hearing must be a little faulty, Dad said. Are you telling us that someone has made off with an 8 square mile building? In a manner of speaking, the chief replied. Our villain, whose identity is still unknown, has cloaked the entire mall in a virtual environment. So the Mall of the Universe has become an alternate universe? Judy said. Exactly, Devlin said. And whoever was shopping when the virtual environment was activated is trapped inside. Where they were once harmless shops and restaurants, there was now a cartoonish prison. Our satellite surveillance, he continued, had given us just a glimpse of this horrible anti-mall. Have you heard of Dante's Inferno? The 9 circles of heck? Well, picture Dante as a valley girl and you'll have a notion of what we're dealing with. There are escalators that go on forever, roller coasters that crawl instead of coast, perfume spritzers who've gone mad, forcing shoppers to submit to humiliating makeovers, and others are being pelted with popcorn and kneaded into gigantic cinnamon rolls. Well, that doesn't sound so bad, Junie said, licking his lips. Carmen rolled her eyes at her ever-hungry brother, then turned back to their badly dressed boss. I know this company program, she said. The virtual environment is bordered by invisible walls, a sort of electric fence. The shoppers were probably tagged with something that's now keeping them inside those walls. And since you Cortezes haven't been tagged, you could theoretically penetrate these barriers? Devlin asked eagerly. That's key, because we are sure that the villain is running his program from somewhere inside the virtual mall. You're right about that, Carmen said, biting her lower lip. But I doubt we can just waltz through the virtual walls. That would be too easy. The villain must have put up some blockers. But Devlin, how big did you say the Mall of the Universe was? 8 square miles, Devlin replied. Ah, can you imagine shopping for 8 square miles? No, Judy and Dad blurted. Sure, Carmen said at the same moment. But actually, that's not why I asked. If our villain is concerned cover that much mileage, there must be seams in the cloak. Translation, please, Judy said. There's no computer in the world strong enough to create such a huge, seamless environment, Carmen explained. It just is impossible. So this madman must have created cells layered next to one another, sort of like hexagons in a honeycomb. Huh. Devlin, Junie, Mom, and Dad said blankly. Between each cell, Carmen explained patiently, there's got to be a seam, a sliver of space that's non-virtual, and that's where we get in. Thank goodness there is a way in, Devlin breathed. Like I said, the computer program running this inferno is inside the inferno itself. Saving the shoppers means penetrating the virtual barriers, finding the computer hub, and dismantling the program. Carmen, you're the best hacker in the OSS, so you're our main, you're our man, uh, girl. Thanks, Carmen said, but I don't usually do solo missions, Mr. Devlin. Oh, believe me, this mission is going to require every last Cortez, Devlin said. Between navigating the crazy mall, tracking down the computer, and catching the villain, you'll have your hands full. Well, Dad, Judy said, turning to his father with a sigh. I guess we're going to the mall after all. Perfect, Devlin said. Normally we'd fly you to North Dakota on an OSS hyperspeed jet, but we're assuming the madman has outfitted the mall with satellite surveillance. We don't want to tip him off to the presence of spies. Of course, Junie said. So you'll find a commercial flight leaving in 45 minutes, Devlin said. There will be an OSS car waiting for you at the airport. Then just follow the signs to the Mall of the Universe. It's the biggest tourist attraction in the state. You really can't miss this place. Oh, and Cortez's? Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Dad said. Get me up a new shirt when the mission's completed, won't you? Devlin said, glancing down at his ridiculous skater t-shirt. This is no way for the OSS chief to be dressed. A few hours later, the Cortezes were driving through the flatlands of North Dakota. Dad was at the wheel, and Mom was navigating. Oh, look, honey, Mom said, pointing. Oh. Hey, Daniel Barry, how you doing tonight? I meant to look that before I began this next part. This transition to the next scene. Oh, look, honey, Mom said, pointing at an enormous, sparkly sign along the highway. Devlin was right. We just follow these billboards. This one says, just 10.3 miles to the Mall of the Universe. The biggest mall in the universe, you betcha. Carmen giggled. About 30 seconds later, she pointed out the window and cried, There's another one! Just 10.1 miles to the Mall of the Universe. Golly, Judy read a few seconds later. Only 9.8 miles to the Mall of the Universe. Gee, I can't wait. These folks sure are enthusiastic, Mom said brightly, after the Cortezes had driven past about a dozen more breathless MOTU signs. Friendly, too, Carmen pointed out as Dad turned into the MOTU parking lot. Imagine how grateful they will be, Dad said, driving down a parking lot aisle. When we save the day for the... Hey! Did you see that? Dad had been just about to pull into a choice parking space right near the mall entrance, but before he could even turn the steering wheel, a minivan screeched down the aisle and swooped in to steal the spot. The mom driving the minivan poked her head through her car window and cackled, You snooze, you lose, out-of-towner. Dad sputtered. Of all the rude, rotten... Honey, Mom said, don't pay attention. There's a spot up ahead. Shaking his head, Dad steered the OSS car toward the parking space Mom had pointed out. This time some kids on zippy motor scooters swerved into the space just ahead of him. They were playing their music so loud they couldn't hear Dad's protests. Why don't we just go over there to park? Carmen said. She was pointing to the far reaches of this parking lot, about 3/4 of a mile from the entrance. And walk all that way? Dad sputtered. This is America! It just isn't done! I will find us the perfect parking space. Mom glanced at Carmen, who looked bewildered. The quest for the perfect parking space, Mom whispered dryly. It's a guy thing. Yeah, and meanwhile, one mission is going cold. Our mission is going cold. Carmen hissed back. How are we going to save the world if we can't even park the car? The $1 million question, isn't it? How to save the world if you can't even park the damn car? Chapter 3. You see, Judy sighed a few minutes later. Dad had just circled the Mall of the Universe parking lot for the 10th time. This is why all malls are evil. Dad's completely lost it. Silly SUV. Dad was grumbling. My parking space, North Dakota. Grr. Dad's knuckles were white. His black wavy hair was sticking up all over his head, and his eyes had a crazed glint to them. You're right, Carmen said to Junie. I haven't seen him this worked up since the neighborhood bully stole your baseball bat. He's gone all crazy, Dad, on us. Happens to the best of them, Mom agreed with a weary nod. But aren't we forgetting something? Judy said, bracing himself against his car door as Dad swerved angrily into yet another parking lot lane. This isn't just any Dad, and this isn't just any car. With that, Judy reached into the front seat and scanned the dashboard. In addition to the usual air conditioner, windshield wiper, and radio controls, Judy saw a few OSS extras. A robotic backseat driver, a milkshake machine, and a turbo rocket boosters. Milkshake, Judy thought dreamily. But then he shook himself out of his snack daydreams. The mission came first. He reached down and jammed the turbo rocket button. Whoa! Dad cried in a very unspy-like manner. The sleek silver OSS car had suddenly jumped 10 feet into the air. It began skimming swiftly over the countless cars in the mall parking lot. Dad quickly recovered his wits and began steering the flying car. Thanks, son, he sighed. I'd needed that. Don't know what came over me. Aha! Dad suddenly forgot what he was saying. He'd spotted something. A car pulling out of the best space in the whole lot. The spot was extra wide and placed near the front of the lane. It was a mere 20 feet from the mall's main entrance. A parking spot like that came along once in a lifetime. And Dad wasn't the only one who'd seen it. A station wagon filled with kids was zipping straight toward the spot. Oh, no, you don't, Dad yelled. That spot is mine! He hit the gas pedal so hard that turbo rockets spewed yellow sparks. Then he sent the car into a nosedive. Ah! Mom, Carmen, and Junie shrieked. The OSS car landed loudly in the spot, cutting the station wagon off cold. Mom behind the wheel shook her fist at Dad. The mom behind the wheel shook her fist at Dad, then sped off in a huff. Ladies and gentlemen, Dad announced smugly, I have parked the car. What would you have done without your papi, eh? Part where I suggested and used our jetpacks to zip to the mall entrance, Carmen said brightly. Well, I suppose that was an option too, Dad said sheepishly. But where's the challenge? Coming right up, Judy answered. He pointed through the car window at the mall entrance. That is a good point too, my boy, Dad said, looking even more sheepish. Mom patted Dad on the shoulder and shot him a forgiving grin. Then she turned around and gazed seriously at the spy kids. Okay, mission time, she said. Does everyone have their gear? Roger, Carmen said. Roger, Carmen said grimly. Roger, Judy said right after. The Cortezes pulled out billowing mesh shopping bags. Each bag was stocked with gadgetry, from shooting cables for swinging from the mall's mezzanine to fluorescent light channeling solar guns. Okay, Judy said, hopping out of the car. Let's do this. Carmen, you focus on locating the computer hub, Mom instructed as the spies walked toward the mall door. We'll back you up. And kids, remember, in a virtual environment, anything is possible. This mall is definitely going to be a bit bizarre. Mom's voice trailed off as they walked through the door. They looked around with wide eyes. Carmen gasped, and Judy gaped. They were looking at the least bizarre mall they'd ever seen. It was silent but for the hum of the dimmed fluorescent lights. Nearby, a candy store, a bubble bath shop, and a woman's clothing boutique, though empty, looked perfectly normal. Judy looked around in exasperation. Okay, first there was the annoying parking lot, and now there are a lot of boring stores, he complained. Looks like an average American mall. Judy began to amble down the wide corridor between the stores. As Carmen watched him, she got a funny feeling in her gut. Her spy instincts were kicking in. She just knew there was something fishy about this very non-fishy setting. Judy, she began, don't make another move. This could be a trap. Before Carmen could complete her warning, Judy disappeared in mid-step. Judy! Mom cried. Then she glanced at her daughter and husband. All together, the spies exclaimed, A seam! Judy must have passed through one of the barriers into the virtual mall, Carmen cried. Let's go! Joining hands, the three remaining spies ran toward the exact spot where Judy had evaporated. Carmen cringed as she passed through the seam. It felt as disgusting as it sounded, like cold, jiggly slime. When she'd squeezed completely through, she looked down at herself. She expected her cool spy outfit, black cargo pants, a long-sleeved yellow OSS shirt, and a gizmo-laden utility belt, to be smeared with gross goo, but she blinked in surprise. Her clothes weren't besmirched in the least. Then Carmen blinked again, and she shook her head, which was suddenly feeling quite dizzy. When Carmen looked up, she saw why. Her clothes might have survived the journey into the virtual mall, but everything else around her had gone nuts. To begin with, the Cortezes had landed right on the merry-go-round, except this was no sweet little kid's ride. The carousel was spinning at an alarming rate. Carmen clung to one of the poles for support. Then she recoiled. Attached to the pole was not a pretty painted wooden horse, but a garish fiberglass clown. Its shiny, enormous face leered at Carmen tauntingly. Then it unleashed an ear-splitting cackle, as if clowns weren't scary enough already. Be like, I guess you could say. Gazing around the carousel, Carmen saw Junie, Mom, and Dad. They were each clinging to poles of their own. Each time one of them struggled to move to a different part of the carousel, a virtual cartoon character would pop up to block the path. The cartoons pulsed with bright neon colors, shrieking and jiggling. Squinting past these virtual creatures, Carmen could just make out the surroundings beyond the merry-go-round. Bizarre didn't begin to describe them. The entrance to every store had become a pulsing, terrifying mouth. A coin fountain in the middle of one of the many mall courtyards seemed to be spewing hot lava. The steps of the endless escalator popped up at random intervals, throwing shoppers over the rails. They landed on a bobbling moonwalk that jiggled them until they looked absolutely green. Speaking of, Carmen was starting to feel pretty queasy herself. Painfully, she pulled herself over to Junie, who was doing his best to kung fu chop one of the obnoxious cartoon characters. He would have taken the critter out if it hadn't been completely virtual. When Junie touched it, it disappeared with a poof and a deafening giggle. We've gotta get off this thing, Junie yelled to his sister through gritted teeth. This is no merry-go-round. It's a merry too loud. No kidding, no kidding, Carmen yelled back. Ear-splitting and totally obnoxious. But it's moving too fast to just jump off. We have to stop it somehow. How? Judy screamed. Before Carmen could wonder out loud, she saw a glint in her peripheral vision. She turned toward the center of the Mary Too Loud and strained to focus through the tremendous noise and bright colors. There! She saw it again. Sticking out of the carousel's central post was a shiny brass ring. Carmen knew that on an ordinary merry-go-round, snapping that ring won you a prize. Who knows what the Mary Too Loud's ring is going to do, Carmen thought with a grimace. But anything would be better than just clinging to this whirligig. So she just had to figure out how to grab the ring. She reached into her shopping bag and pulled out an extra large, extra stretchy rubber band. Once upon a time, Uncle Machete told her that spy kids never to leave home without a rubber band. It was a million gadgets in one. Let's just hope he was right, Carmen muttered, efficiently tying a couple of sailor's knots in the band. She strung it between two of the Mary Too Loud's poles. Then she pressed the small of her back into the rubber band and took a few steps backward. The rubber band stretched taut. Carmen inched back some more, and more. Finally, the rubber band had reached its limit. It would not stretch anymore. What are you doing? Judy yelled at Carmen. If you want to slingshot yourself off this thing, you're facing the wrong way. And leave you guys behind to hog all the fun? Carmen shouted with a wink. She turned back to focus on the ring. She did a quick physics calculation in her head. Then she crossed her fingers, and at precisely the right time, she lifted her feet from the floor. Boing! Ah! Carmen cried as she sailed toward the Mary Too Loud's central shaft. She barely missed 3 pulls before she collided with the carousel's center and the brass ring. Triumphantly, Carmen yanked the ring off the little hook in the Mary Too Loud's middle. Then she held her breath to see what would happen. The results were not good. The Mary Too Loud got louder, and then it spun harder. It began to become unbalanced, bobbling up and down on its axis, shaking the spies like popcorn kernels. Finally, it began to spin so fast it couldn't hold on to their poles any longer. They went careening through the air. Ah! Screamed every last Cortez. And where we'll land, nobody knows, Carmen thought in guilty panic as the spy family hurtled through the air. Chapter 4. Ooh! Judy grunted as he landed on the floor. Nearby, Carmen, Mom, and Dad were also skidding to a halt in their butts. They looked as dazed as Judy felt. The next time I beg you to take me to an amusement park, Judy groaned to his parents, please say no. Ditto in the mall, Carmen moaned, holding her temples. Then she looked around. Hey, it looks like the Mary Too Loud tossed us right back to where we started, she said. All evidence of the horrible virtual mall had disappeared. Once again, the Cortezes were stranded in the actual and thoroughly quiet mall. Judy lurched woozily to his feet and stumbled back to the spot where the spies had squelched through the invisible wall. There was no trace of the virtual inferno. Frowning, Judy began waving his hands through the air and poking his fingers out in front of him. Finally, one of his pokes opened a shimmery hole in the invisible wall. The edges of the hole undulated like the body of a delicate jellyfish. And through the hole, Judy and his family could see straight into the virtual mall. The carousel was still spinning loudly, A giant candy machine was shooting gumballs in every direction. Ear-splitting elevator music played on the sound system. It was distorted so it sounded even more unbearable than usual. And the shoppers were freaking out. They ducked the gumballs with anxious shrieks. They covered beneath the umbrella tables in a nearby food court, until, of course, the huge umbrellas began snapping at them like Venus flytraps. They were all definitely in need of saving. All of them, that is, except for 3 kids in graduating sizes who were coming straight for the fluttery hole in the wall. They looked totally on top of things, Judy thought. He smiled and waved to the kids. 2 boys and a girl. They waved back and trotted over to them, stopping several feet away. Dude, said the tallest boy, that was a killer splat off the merry-go-round. You guys look like my favorite video game. Super Squash Paratroopers 9. Well, I guess that makes sense, Judy said with a shrug. We're here from the OSS. Cool, the older boy said. I'm Jake, by the way. Hi, Jake, said Carmen. She'd silently settled up next to her brother. Judy watched her take in Jake's sporty clothes, his long lashed with blue eyes and the blonde hair spiking out from beneath his baseball cap. Then he saw her face go all red and flirty. Oh man, Judy thought with a huff. Make way for another Carmen crush. Girls! They always dig the skater punks. I'm Carmen, Judy Swoonie's sister said. Cool, Jake said again. Then he jerked his thumb toward his companions. The movement made the gears strapped to the belt loops of his low-slung skater shorts jangle. The guy was outfitted with a cell phone, pager, Game Boy, Walkman TV, the works. This squirt is my little brother Mickey, he said, bopping the grinning, bespectacled little boy on the head. He's 7. Gonna, Mickey said with a little wave. His mouth was full of some sort of mungo snack. It looked like a lime green corn dog. Clearly, Judy thought, the snacks have gone bizarro too. Still looks tasty though. And this is Pollyanna, Jake said, pointing to the girl in the group. She glared at Jake. Whatever, she muttered. Then she stifled a bright red wad of bubblegum from her right cheek to her left and addressed the spy kids directly. My name is not Pollyanna, she said. Well, actually it is. My parents went through a Haley Mills phase right before I was born, but nobody calls me that. I'm Red. See? She twirled one of her brown pigtails. It was laced with fire engine red hair extensions. Her sequin Hello Kitty t-shirt was candy apple red. Her super flared bootlegs were embroidered with cherry-colored flowers, and her trendy suede boots were red too. I'm Jake's best friend, Red went on, even though I'm 11 and he's 13. That's 'cause girls mature faster. Plus, I'm super smart and I skipped a grade. Some people think Jake's just pretending to be my best friend. Because my sister's like 17 and can drive us to the mall every day. But that's so not true, right, Jake? Dude, not true at all, Jake said, with a gruff grin. To prove it, he gave Red a friendly punch on the arm. Man, it's a good thing your sister didn't stay at the mall today, Mickey piped up, wiping some blue mustard off his upper lip. She'd be wiggling if she was here. Speaking of wigging, Judy said, can you tell us what's been happening? Please do, Mom said. She and Dad strode over to stand behind Carmen and Junie at the window. We're Carmen and Junie's parents. A real whole spy family? Jake breathed. Cool! I'm getting tired of saying that, but I know it's going to be a running gag. Carmen giggled weakly. That's right, Dad said. We are the Cortezes, OSS spy family, and we are going to get you out of this. So do not be afraid, okay, Jake? Dad, Carmen muttered through gritted teeth. She squirmed in embarrassment. Does he look scared to you? He's cool as a cucumber. Well, we were freaked out first, Jake admitted. But once we figured out what happened, we were okay with it. It's like the mall went all Matrix on us. Yeah, and now we're trapped here, Red said. She held up her wrist and showed the spies a tight yellow bracelet with the silver letters MOTU emblazoned on it. What's that? Judy asked, eyeing identical bracelets on Jake's and Vicky's wrists. It's a Mall of the Universe promotional bracelet, Red said. These mall workers were strapping one onto every shopper who came in. We thought it was like fashion, Vicky cut in. But actually they're more like those zappy dog collars. You know, the kind that gives Spot a shock if he tries to jump the electric fence. Harsh, Judy said. Cha, Red agreed. You try to break through the cloaking system with one of these things on, and it's shock it to me, baby! One guy tried it, Jake said with a sorrowful nod. The minute he hit the wall, he started smoking. We had to douse him out with the froyo machine. The spies exchanged troubled glances. They were tagged, Carmen said. I knew it! Luckily they missed us. And we have our entryway, Dad said, pointing to the shimmery hole in the cloak. So are you ready to go back into this mall of madness and save the day? Ready! The other spies shouted. They piled their hands on top of one another's in solidarity. I'll go first, Dad announced heroically, backing away from the hole. Stand back, children. Dad began running toward the hole. After 3 precisely spaced steps, he made his leap. As he soared through the air, he thrust his hands over his head. Next, he'll plunge through the hole and somersault to his feet, Judy thought proudly. Our dad's pretty cool, I gotta admit. Cling! Ay, ay, ay! Dad shrieked. His head hit the hole in the barrier as if it were a cast iron skillet. Dad was blocked cold, and a moment later, he was out cold. Gregorio! Mom cried, leaping to his side. Reaching into her mesh shopping bag, she pulled out a small red capsule and broke it beneath her husband's nose. Instantly, Dad awoke, sputtering and snorting and sobbing. Dude, those are some strong smelling salts, Jake said from inside of the seam. Custom made by Uncle Machete, Mom said with a nod. Hot chilies, chocolate, and the smell of Grandma Cortez's paella. It gets him every time. My husband is very emotional, both Carmen and Judy announced with a giggle. And very bumming, Jake added. How are you guys going to get in here now? Carmen eyed the shimmery hole. She walked up it and rapped it with her fists. Then she struck it harder. Little red and orange sparks shot out from beneath her knuckles. Just as I suspected, Carmen said. Our villain installed an emergency firewall. It'll pop up every time the cloak is breached. If we're going to get in there, we've got to start from scratch and find ourselves a new seam in the virtual barrier. Whoa! Jake said, gazing at Carmen in awe and chagrin. Uncool! Gee, I wonder what's so cool about that. Chapter 5. Okay, so we've got a boogie, Judy told the mall rats. We're going to find a way in there and save you guys. Spread the word to the other shoppers. But whatever you do, stay under the radar. You go, Spy Kids, Mickey cried, jumping up and down and punching his skinny arms into the air. And, you too, Spy Parents. Gracias, Dad said. He started to back away from the window. But please, he said, be careful, children. Children. For those of you that don't know, gracias is Spanish for thank you. And to say you're welcome, it's de nada. So many people are going to be like, dude, you didn't have to tell us that. We knew it already. Maybe so, but not everybody knows it, so I'm just saying. Alright. Carmen trailed behind her family, shooting one last longing glance back at Jake. He waved at her again, looking a little wild himself. Suddenly, his face lit up. Hey, Carmen, he called. I just thought of something. Do you have to be a spy to help take out this dork? Carmen blinked in surprise. Why hadn't she thought of that earlier? The Cortezes were outside the virtual mall, but Jake, Red, and Mickey were in. They could totally help with the mission. Carmen trotted back to the window. She looked through the seam at Jake. There might be something you can do, she said with a smile. But you have to promise me you won't put yourselves in any danger. Sure, Jake said with a shrug. I'm not looking for trouble, but anything would be better than just sitting around the food court watching Mickey eat. Hey, speak for yourself, Mickey protested. He just pulled a bag of orange candied nuts out of his baggy jeans pocket and was busy munching away. Those seem like, that sounds like, the candy known as circus peanuts, where they're like this big peanut-shaped looking candy. I know of them. I never had them. I don't think I've had them. And even if I did, I probably wouldn't have liked them anyway, if I'm being honest. Meanwhile, Carmen was thinking. The only thing I know for sure about this computer program, Carmen told the mall rats, is it's huge. We're talking mega RAM, and that means it requires a ton of electricity to keep the computer up and running. Yeah, Red said. So there's a chance that all that energy might drain wattage from nearby areas, Carmen said. Maybe you could search the mall for signs of a power drain. You know, dim lights or weird sparks. Power outs, anything unusual? Carmen looked at Jake. Jake, does your cell phone work in there? Of course, Jake said, unclipping his tiny electric blue phone from his belt and showing it to Carmen. I've got the latest tech. Okay, just call me on my spy watch if you see anything, Carmen said. She held out her wrist to show the kids her watch. It was large and glinty and capable of just about anything, from satellite-assisted navigation to wireless communication to computer hacking. Carmen and Judy never went anywhere without their spy watches. Whoa! Jake said, peering at the gadget. I guess I don't have the very latest tech. That's the coolest thing I ever saw. Excuse me. Carmen felt herself blushing. Then she gave her head a little shake. Hello, Carmen, she told herself. Mission time? Hundreds of lives and shopping establishments at stake? Get a hold of yourself, Cortez. Carmen rattled off her spy watch's contact number to Jake, who keyed it into his cell phone's memory bank. Then he pulled a brown paper bag out of his baggy shorts pocket. I picked this stuff up from Pincher's Gifts, he said. They're just gags that have gone all wacky in the virtual mall. But who knows, maybe they'll come in handy. I copped tons of them, so why don't you have these? Jake winged the bag through the hole. It landed, smoking slightly, at Carmen's feet. She picked it up and slipped the packet into her mesh shopping bag. Thanks, Carmen said. She felt a gushy smile crinkle up her face. So much for keeping cool. And good luck! She dashed off to find her family. She didn't have to search long. Only a few hundred feet down the dim mall corridor, they'd found another seam. Or rather, it had found them. Carmen gasped. This portal was no mere hole. Like the mall-like storefronts in the virtual mall, the seam had taken on the shape of a snout, complete with a giant toothy mouth. It was almost transparent. Carmen could barely make out the snout's silvery outlines as it lunged out of the invisible wall. It growled and snapped at the spies. And then it snagged one of them. Junie. Get it off me! Judy began screaming. The mouth had seized him by the feet and was gnawing on him like he was a giant lollipop. Mom and Dad leaped toward their son, but when they tried to pull him out of the hole, several more almost impossible snouts erupted from the wall and snapped at them. Hang on, Judy! Mom cried. She had just dumped her shopping bag of gadgets out on the floor and began pawing through them. We'll save you! As soon as we figure out how! That's not very reassuring, Judy yelled back. This is all being orchestrated by the villain's computer, Mom said to Dad and Carmen. If only we could hack our way out of this. Impossible, Dad said through gritted teeth. The computer and the madman who programmed it are in there. He gestured angrily at the invisible wall. So we come up with a plan B, Carmen cried. We'll... Carmen was racking her brains for a rescue plan when a voice distracted her. The sound was billowing angry phrases, and cackling madly, and getting closer. Carmen dropped into a kung fu fighting stance. She raised her fists and planted her feet. Her eyes narrowed into highly focused slits. Their invader was coming into view. He ran down the mall corridor toward the Cortezes. His big jiggly belly bounced a foot in front of him, and his frizzy shock of brown curls bounced too. He was wearing a tattered brown uniform that looked vaguely military. In one plump hand, he held a spindly wooden chair, and in the other he had a long brown leather whip. Hold it right there, Carmen barked. Yeah, Mom and Dad said, planting themselves behind their daughter. Sorry, no time, the man huffed. Gotta rescue this poor kid over here. And then, as Carmen and her parents looked on in shock, the man hustled over to the virtual mouths. Da! Da! The man shouted. He cracked his whip at one of the silvery snouts like a professional lion tamer. It worked. Instantly, the mouth whimpered and retracted back into the virtual wall, finally disappearing from view entirely. It's the noise these Chew babies hate, the man said over his shoulder as he cracked the whip again. They're big scaredy cats, really. Well, if it's noise they want, noise they'll get, Carmen said with determination. While the man continued to fend off the snouts with cracks of his whip, Carmen thrust her hand into her shopping bag. She pulled out the paper parcel Jake had given her and quickly glanced through the assorted gifts. Aha, she said, snatching up one of the items. Looks like this cherry bomb has been virtualized into a cherry tree bomb. 500 times the noise. She focused a searing laser beam from her spy watch onto the cherry tree bomb's fuse. The little wick quickly began sputtering and sparking. Everyone, she ordered, cover your ears! Carmen tossed the cherry tree bomb over toward Judy. It landed next to his elbow. The noisemaker exploded with such force the entire mall seemed to tremble. The spies and the strange man were wetly pelted with scods of maraschino cherries. But more importantly, the remaining virtual snouts screeched and retreated back into their invisible wall. Judy's feet suddenly came back into view. He rolled away from the virtual barrier and wiggled his limbs happily. Sweet, he said, savoring his freedom. Then he picked a few splatted cherries off of his shirt and popped them into his mouth. Literally, great gadget, Carmen. Mom ran to embrace Judy in a bear hug. Then she turned to the rest of the group. Judy's right, sweetie, Mom said to her daughter. Great save. But we also owe this nice man. Mom extended her hand to the stranger. How can we thank you, Mr. Pitchman, the man said, shaking Mom's hand wearily. Webster D.C. Pitchman. Pickman, head of security here at the Mall of the Universe. You must be shoppers. How did you manage to escape? Shoppers, Judy blurted. No way, we're spies. We're here to save the day. Oh, Webster said. His friendly face suddenly deflated a bit. Save the day. How wonderful. Dad strode up to the man and clapped a friendly arm around his shoulders. I know what you're thinking, Dad said sympathetically. You're the head of security. You would like to save the day all by yourself. But believe me, there's no shame in needing a little help from the OSS. Whoever has taken over this mall is a genius. An evil, mad genius. There's no way you could have seen this takeover coming. While Webster nodded appreciatively, Judy scrutinized the security officer. Do I know you from somewhere? Judy asked. You look really familiar. Oh, I get that all the time, Webster said. You know those "you're here" kiosks all over the mall? My face is on every one of them. I'm practically famous! Oh, Judy said. That must be it. But, as fascinated as I am, enough about me, Webster said. When he laughed, his belly jiggled and wiggled over his pants. We have to talk about the poor shoppers who are trapped in the virtual mall. They're being battered and bewildered, sliced and diced, figuratively speaking, of course. Hey, Judy said suspiciously. That sounds familiar. No time for small talk, spy boy, Webster interrupted. He clutched Judy's shoulders in his big, plump hands. Think of all the people. You've got to find a way to help. You've got to find a way to save them. Hey, Based Redemption, how you doing tonight? Great stream, man. I love Spy Kids. Hey, I love Spy Kids too. Like I said, I watched the 3 Spy Kids movies. Spy Kids Island of Lost Dreams, and Spy Kids 3 Game Over. I have never seen Spy Kids 4, but I know that is a thing, and I think that was the last Spy Kids movie that they made. That is to my knowledge. Alright. Chapter 6. Carmen looked at Webster. His brown eyes were practically bulging with concern. She walked over to the distraught man and placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Don't worry, she said. I'm an expert hacker. I'll dismantle the villain's computer program in no time, and then you'll have your mall back just the way it was before. Just the way it was before, Webster said. Excuse me. His face slackened again and his buggy eyes glazed over. I know, Judy said, putting his hand on Webster's other shoulder. It will be a big relief. Oh, of course, Webster said. I mean, where would we all be without all this beautiful, beautiful retail? Oh, I don't know, said Dad said sarcastically. Europe? Gregorio, Mom chided chided him with a grin. Then she turned to Webster. Forgive my husband. You know non-Americans. They just don't understand the urge to shop till you drop. We better get started, Judy pointed out, before the shoppers in the virtual mall start to take that phrase literally. You're right, Webster said. His fleshy face became animated again, and he pumped his fist in the air. I'll help you! After all, I know the mall of the universe like the back of my hand. I'll show you the best places to go to look for this brilliant, terrible computer. Let's go! Waving the spies forward, Webster began to trot down the corridor, but Carmen held up her hand. Wait a minute, she said. We're talking 8 square miles of mall. Don't you think we should split up? We'll have that much more chance of actually succeeding. Ah, that's why my little girl's a level 1 spy, Dad said, patting Carmen on the head. Indeed, let's split up. You and Judy can head toward the amusement park in the mall's southern corner. Your mother and I will go with Webster in the opposite direction. Are you sure that's a good idea? Webster asked, clasping and wringing his hands nervously. I mean, this bad guy. He can be big and strong and dangerous. Please, Judy said. I know my computer geeks. Big and strong is not an issue. Hey! Carmen growled defensively. Except where my sister is concerned, of course, Judy added, rolling his eyes. Besides, Webster, you don't have to worry about us. We're highly trained spies. We know what we're doing. But, Webster protested. Don't worry about it, Carmen insisted. We'll be fine. The day will be saved before you know it. An hour later, Carmen and Judy were still tromping through the non-virtual mall. Carmen complained. We're never going to save the day at this rate. In their search for a seam into the virtual environment, she and Judy had been poking at store windows, peering into fountains, and swiping at the air with their fists, but they were turning up zilch. Carmen sighed and kept walking. She found herself casting wistful glances in the direction of dormant clothes boutiques and sweet-smelling cosmetic shops. But after a few minutes of yearning, she tried to discard any daydreams about shopping. She had to focus on the mission. Judy, on the other hand, seemed less concerned. When Carmen glanced his way, she saw that he drifted over to a hot pretzel stand in the middle of the mall corridor. Judy, she admonished, what are you doing? Judy circled the little pretzel cart, gazing at it curiously. It was a silver cube topped by a blue umbrella. To Carmen, it looked no different from the dozens of snack stands the spy kids had already passed. Look at that, Judy said, pointing to the silver cube. It could be a seam. It's sort of shimmery. Maybe we should check it out. I know you, Junie, Carmen accused. As usual, you're just stalling for a snack. And as usual, we don't have time for that. Come on! She started to continue down the corridor, but Judy wouldn't budge. Judy! Carmen barked in irritation. Judy ignored her and began sifting through a shopping bag of gizmos. In a moment, he pulled out a plastic squeeze bottle. What is that? Carmen said, trudging back to her brother irritably. A knuckle machete special, Judy said. It's called Peel Me an Onion. Huh? Carmen blurted out in confusion. Judy uncocked the bottle and squeezed it. A squirt of liquid shot out of the nozzle, splattered against a silver pretzel stand. Pew! Carmen cried as the liquid's fumes hit her square in the face. It smelled like the stinkiest onion in the world. Uncle's machete glitches strike again, Judy said with a sniffle. Tears were spilling out of his eyes. No need to cry about it, Carmen said with a laugh. I am not crying, Judy yelled. It's just the onion fumes. If you tell anybody... But before Judy could come up with a good threat, he blinked through his tears in surprise. Something was happening to the pretzel stand. Before the spy kid's eyes, the cube's silvery coating began to peel away. Beneath the silver was a layer of white fiberglass. Quickly that peeled off too, flopping onto the floor in a shimmery sheet. Next, a chunk of foam began to peel away. I get it, Carmen cried. That sticky stuff is peeling the pretzel stand in layers, just like an onion. I wonder what layer's next, Judy said breathlessly. As he spoke, the foam layer fell off the floor, and the spy kids found themselves blinking at a shimmery, undulated hole. A seam! Carmen and Judy cried together. The portal was low to the ground and only a couple of feet in the diameter, but it was clearly an entryway into this alternate universe. Peeking through the hole, the spy kids could see a movie theater marquee advertising nothing but boring French films with subtitles. Nearby was a smoothie stand where the only ingredients were wheatgrass and beets. Talk about a horror show, Judy breathed. Looks like we're in the right place. Giggling with glee, Carmen crouched down and began to clamber through the hole. But halfway through, she felt something like plastic wrap tighten around across her head. As she tried to push through, the plastic grew more and more taut until it threw her backward like a slingshot. Hey! She cried as she fell onto her backside, several feet from the seam. Indignantly, she clambered to her feet and tried leaping through the portal. She got a little farther this time, but once again, the invisible barrier pushed her back. Next, Junie shoved at Carmen's feet, but that didn't help either. This is hopeless, Judy sputtered. If only someone could pull us in from the other side. How about Jake? Carmen cried. Judy gave Carmen a suspicious look. She'd find any excuse to get another glimpse of her crush. Teenagers. Catching Judy's accusing glare, Carmen added defensively, And Red and Mickey, they could help us. Carmen quickly punched the cell phone number Jake had given her into her spy watch. After 4 wings, the mall rat answered breathlessly. Dude, he said to Carmen, we just outran a survey taker. A survey taker? Carmen asked. You know, Jake said. Those chirpy people will corner you in the mall with clipboards and ask you annoying questions about shampoo and stuff. Yeah? Well, in the virtual mall, they sort of hypnotize you, Jake said. And before you know it, you're answering 20,000 questions. Tell her how I... Tell her how. Right after we dodged the clipboard mafia, I almost slid down the bottomless slide at the playground, Carmen heard Mickey say in the background. Close call! Clearly we don't have any time to waste, Carmen said. We found a sea, but we need some help. Can you come give us a yank? Carmen described her location. A few minutes later, Jake, Red, and Mickey arrived. They were all wearing oversized oven mitts. Cute, huh? Red said, showing off her tomato-colored mitts. I picked them up on the way over here. Hopefully they'll cut down on the sparklage. All 3 mall rats began to tug and pull on Judy's hands until he finally plunged through the seams with a pop. Next they yanked Carmen through. She shot through the seam with such force that she landed in a heap on Jake. Pulling off his now smoking oven mitt, Jake helped her to her feet. Hot stuff, he said with a grin. Thanks, Carmen replied, her face starting to turn red. I meant the oven mitt, Jake said, dropping the glove to the floor and stomping out the little flame in its thumb. Oh, Carmen said. She was sure her face was as crimson as Red's pigtails. And you're welcome, Jake said with a cockeyed grin. Oh, Carmen said again. But before she could get too swoony, Mickey cut in. Before you teenagers get all gushy, he said, rolling his eyes, maybe you want to talk about something that really matters? Like the computer hub, for instance? Yeah, that is a very important thing there, wouldn't you say? Yes. Chapter 7. Carmen gasped and stared at Mickey. You found the computer hub? She demanded. Well, we saw it, Mickey said, sticking out his chin proudly. Um, maybe. Red stepped in front of Mickey and popped her strawberry gum loudly. Okay, enough showing off, she said. Here's the scoop, see? We were running all over the mall when I saw a blue light glowing off the distance. It was tucked into the big palm trees in the Amazonian themed restaurant, the one with the real piranhas. Good eye, Junie said. Thanks, Red said. I never miss a blue light special. So anyway, we were heading toward the light to check it out when somebody decided to stop and listen to some music. You know these guys with the crank-handled organs and the little monkeys that take your money. I love those little monkeys, Judy exclaimed. See? Mickey said to Red with a pout. It was an honest mistake. Uh-huh, Red said to him dryly. Then she turned back to Carmen and Judy and continued. So Mickey here decides to give little monkey a quarter, and then the little monkey decides to morph into a giant gorilla. He chased us right out of the theme restaurant. Jake sacrificed his tiny TV for the cause. Yeah, do it at the gorilla, Jake said with a scowl. Luckily, I thought to turn it on first. The big hairy ape got caught up in a Tarzan cartoon, and we were able to dash. Carmen smiled. Jake had serious spy potential. And that's when you called us and we came here, Red went on, bursting through Carmen's daydreams. Do you remember the coordinates of the blue light? Judy asked briskly. Please, I know the layout of this mall better than I know my own house, Red said with a grin. We'll get you there. Then let's go, Judy cried. The 5 kids began racing through the mall. As they went, they passed lots of stunned shoppers. One, a straight-laced looking man, seemed to have been forcibly dressed up in balloon sculptures. He tugged at the humiliating balloon duck resting on his head, but it wouldn't come off. Another shopper reeked of cheap perfume, and a frustrated woman was covered from head to toe with super sticky caramel corn. Don't worry, Judy yelled at them all. Help is on the way. Thank goodness, the sticky woman said. She clutched Judy's hand in gratitude as he ran by. No, thank you, Judy said, glancing at the caramel corn that was now stuck to his palm. He was happily gnawing on the crunchy snack when suddenly a rumbling shook the floor. The spies and mall rat froze in front of the bookstore and glanced at each other nervously. Okay, what do you think that was? Carmen asked. Maybe it was a bunch of happy shoppers stampeding to a super sale at the department store around the corner? Red suggested hopefully. Or skater kids doing some triple ollies on the skate ramp downstairs? Jake muttered pleadingly. Or maybe, Judy quivered, it's our villain with another trick up his sleeve! No sooner had Judy made this conjecture than the trick emerged. Right out of the floor. The floorboards splintered, and through them rose a giant sparkling boulder. It was made of a clear glass-like substance and was cut into glinty planes and angles. The kids had to leap backward to avoid being splattered by the giant rock. When the boulder finally shuddered to a halt, the kids scrambled to their feet and began running away from it. Thrump! Another glinty rock erupted from the floor, cutting them off cold. They careened to the left. Thrump! And the right. Thrump! This time, when the boulder emerged, it popped out further. The kids could see huge gold prongs cradling the rock at its base. I recognize these things, Judy cried. They're giant cubic zirconia rings. Cubic what? Jake said, wiping shards of small floor from his shoulders. Fake diamonds, Judy said. You can buy them on the web. Yeah, if you have really bad taste, Red cried. She dodged yet another zirconia as it burst through the floor. Then she spun around in a circle. Everywhere she looked, giant fake diamonds stared back at her. The boulders had formed a perfect circle around the 5 kids. We're surrounded by cubic zirconia, Red blurted. They blocked us in. Not for long, Carmen announced. She pulled a few sticks of gum from her mesh shopping bag and handed one to Red. No thanks, Red said, opening her mouth to show Carmen her wad of bright strawberry gum. I've already got some. This isn't for blowing bubbles, Carmen said. It's sticky soul gum. It's not the fanciest gadget the OSS has ever come up with, but it's a classic. Chew it up and stick it to the bottoms of your shoe. Then wait 3 seconds and start climbing. And besides, Carmen said, as she ripped the wrapper off her own stick of gum, it's red! Cinnamon flavor! You'll like it! Grinning, Red spat out her strawberry wad and popped the sticky soul gum into her mouth. Carmen tossed sticks to Mickey, Jake, and Junie. Mere seconds later, the kids' shoes were gummed up. They were able to climb over the cubic zirconia easily. They were free. No sooner had they landed outside the glittery prison than another thumping began to fill the mall. What now? Carmen cried. I think we're trapped in a giant tacky infomercial, Red shrieked. With trembling finger, she pointed down the corridor. Judy followed Red's gaze. 5 tall, stiff people were making their way toward them, and for some reason, instead of running, they were hopping. Each hop covered about 10 feet. They were gaining on the kids quickly. As the intruders got closer, Judy blinked in disbelief. They weren't people. They were 8-foot-tall dolls. One was wearing a green sateen dress with a hoop skirt. Another had blonde braids and a stiff white Dutch cap. Yet another wore deep purple, Victorian velvet. They all had porcelain faces plastered with blank rosy smiles. Their feet were moored to giant plastic pedestals. They're massive collector's dolls, Red announced. And they're gonna stop us! Run! Carmen ordered. Thunk, 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 thunk. The kids' sticky souls made puckery sucking noises as they scattered. Carmen and Red darted into the bookstore. Judy and Jake ducked behind the crabs of one of the giant cubic zirconia. But Mickey stood his ground. He was going to take on the quickly approaching collector's dolls. Mickey! Carmen screamed at him. Get out of there now! I would if I could, Mickey shouted. But I'm stuck! The other kids gasped. Mickey wasn't trying to be a hero. His little legs were simply no match for the sticky souls. But perhaps the Spy Kid's gadgets were. Judy stepped out from behind his cubic zirconium and raised his wrist to eye level. He pressed a few buttons on his spy watch. Suddenly a bright red laser beam shot out from the watch. Judy aimed the beam at Mickey. As the red stream of light traveled along the floor toward the boy, it left a smoking black trail. Hey, watch her with that thing! Mickey shrieked. Believe me, I am, Judy called back. Carefully, he moved the laser beam onto Mickey's shoes. In 2 seconds, Mickey's shoelaces had disappeared in a plume of smoke. Grinning, Mickey hopped out of his shoes and got ready to run for cover. And that's just when the huge plastic hand of one of the collector's dolls, the doll with the one with the corkscrew curls and white sailor dress, scooped him up. She began hopping away with Mickey tucked under her plastic arm. Spy Kids! Mickey screamed. Help me! Let's see, I'll tell you what. It's already 3 o'clock. I'll go ahead and read chapter 8 and we'll continue the second half tomorrow. Alright? Chapter 8. Mickey! Jake cried, running out from behind his hiding spot by the cubic zirconia. He stood out in the open, gasping with fear. We have to do something! I gotta save my little bro! Well, you can't save him if you get caught yourself, Carmen cried. Over Jake's shoulder, she spotted another collector's doll. It was the monstrous Dutch girl, and she was advancing upon Jake fast. Carmen dove at Jake, shoving him out of the doll's grip just in time. And together they rolled to the side of the corridor and skidded beneath the bench. For the time being, they were out of harm's way. Meanwhile, Red and Judy had climbed to the top of the furthest cubic zirconia, well out of reach of the cumbersome dolls. From a safe distance, the two boys surveyed the area. Red was staring in horror at the large Shirley Temple doll who was making off with Mickey. We'll save you, Mickey, she called. But when she turned to Judy, her eyes were brimming with fearful tears. We will save him, Judy said to Red. Don't worry. Wait here where it's safe. Quickly, Judy pulled a sucker dart out of his utility belt and aimed it directly at Carmen and Jake's bench. Splat! The sucker dart, which had a skinny but strong cable attached to its back end, made a direct hit on the bench. Judy anchored his end of the cable on one of the fake diamond ring's gold prongs. Then he swiftly and confidently walked this tightrope down to Carmen and Jake, sliding beneath the bench to join them. Judy quickly retracted his cable back into the dart gun with a wzzz. Ready for a rescue? He asked Carmen. Ready, Carmen said grimly and a little breathlessly. Me too, Jake declared. When Carmen and Judy glanced at him skeptically, he blurted out, What? You expect me to just sit here while some dude runs off with my bro? No, he's my brother. I'm helping. Carmen glanced at her little brother. She had to admit she knew just how Jake was feeling, so she nodded brusquely and said, Okay, but you have to do everything we tell you. Roger, Jake said. Anything for Mickey. Man, those dolls are totally whack. Hey, Judy said. His green eyes gleamed. That's it! Whack-a-mole! Otherwise known as Spy Maneuver Number 36C? Carmen asked. She got a similar gleam in her brown eyes. Precisely, Judy said. Perfect plan for 3 people. Are you talking about that arcade game where you think the mole's on the head when they pop out of their holes? Jake sputtered. Dudes, that's a cool game and all, but there's no way we're going to be able to just conk out 3 dolls. They're huge. No, Jake, Judy said. They're not the moles. We are. What? What? Jake squeaked. But there was no time for any more chatting. The Spy Kids got busy peeling the sticky soles off their shoes and replacing them with sets of remote control pop springs. Carmen pulled a third set of the springs out of her bag and helped Jake strap them onto his own shoes. Good thing I packed Mom's pop springs in my bag, Carmen said. I think that they'll just about fit you. What do I do with these things? Jake asked. He stared down at the flattened springs on the soles of his feet. Just follow our lead, Carmen said with a daring smile. Then she glanced at both boys and barked, Let's move! The three kids began tiptoeing across the floor toward Mickey and his curly-topped captor. Just as the spy kids had expected, the other dolls spotted them right away. Clunk, clunk, clunk. They were coming over. Wait, wait, Carmen cautioned her partners. The Victorian doll was the closest. She was bearing down on Junie. Now! Cartman shouted. I keep saying Cartman for some reason. Carmen shouted. Judy hit the button on his Pop Springs remote control. The springs sprang out of his soles, popping Judy into the air. He flew up, 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 whizzing right by the doll's porcelain nose. Her glassy blue eyes blinked in surprise. She whacked at him and missed. Jake! Carmen cried to the stunned mall rat. Now you! Though he still looked flummoxed, Jake nodded and hit the small red button on his own remote control. Spring! As Jake flew into the air, the doll whacked at him. She missed again. The doll spun to get a crack at Carmen, and this time she almost connected. As Carmen felt the doll's plastic fist whiz by her ear, she did a perfect mid-air toe touch. She dodged out of the doll's way just in time. Careful, Carmen! Jake cried out. His voice was filled with concern. Carmen couldn't believe she could blush in the middle of Spy Maneuver 36C, but that's exactly what she did. And despite all the blushing, Spy Maneuver 36C was working. After all that fruitless whacking, the Victorian doll was looking a little befuddled. She began to teeter, and then she tottered. Judy gave her leg a shove and she toppled over altogether. When she crashed to the floor, her big arms popped off her body, and her plastic pedestal rolled away. These collector's dolls are cheap, Carmen said in disgust. They're also out for revenge, Judy said, pointing over Carmen's shoulder. Sure enough, the remaining 4 dolls, including the one clutching the howling Mickey, were hopping over to them now. Perfect! Carmen cried. Perfect! Jake blustered. Dude, we're gonna get flattened. No, we won't. Just... I know, Jake interrupted. Follow your lead. You don't have to convince me. Flushing with pride, Carmen lined up between Judy and Jake. She poised her finger over her Pop Springs remote control button, and then she waited. Carmen did a quick calculation in her head. The dolls would be close enough in approximately 2.5 seconds. Ready, she said to the boys. Set, spring! Spring, spring, spring. Judy popped to the left just before the hoop-skirted doll squashed him with her skinny black shoes. Jake popped right, barely missing the Dutch doll's razor-sharp cap. But Carmen shot forward, directly into Shirley Temple's gut. Oh, wow, that was great. That was a really good pop, jeez. That was the sound of Mickey popping out of the doll's plastic grip. Hold on, I'm trying to do this right. I can't do it, but... I'm trying to do a plop. Whatever. And that was Mickey landing right on top of his brother Jake. The two boys sprawled on the floor in a monetary daze. Then they started cackling triumphantly and pumped in the air with their fists. They gave each other a quick, happy hug. Thump. There's no time for a reunion now, Judy yelled at the mall rats. Jake, you and Mickey go get red and hide. We'll finish off these dolls and call you when the coast is clear. Thanks, dudes, Jake yelled. He grabbed Mickey by the elbow and hit his remote-controlled button one more time. Together the brothers popped up and out of danger. After watching Jake and Mickey make their escape, Judy turned his attention back to the looming dolls. 2 were coming at the spy kids from the front, and 2 were behind them. The dolls were moving fast. Without taking his eyes off the advancing monster dolls, Judy whispered to his sister, "Okay, this should be a cinch. I'll take the Dutch girl and the Victorian. You take the other 2. Okay, Carmen?" "Carmen?" Judy glanced to his left. Then he looked to his right. Where had Carmen gone? Fearfully, Judy looked up. Sure enough, Carmen was in the grip of the hoop-skirted doll. Her mouth was gagged with the doll's pretty green hair bow, and her hands were tied. Spring! Without thinking twice, Judy used his pop springs to jump onto the doll's voluminous skirt. He clutched the slippery fabric as he began climbing up toward his sister. "Don't worry, Carmen," Judy called up to his stolen sib. "I'll get you out of this." Carmen grunted behind herself and gagged. To Judy's ears, her muffled cry sounded like, "What?" I said I will get you out of this," Judy said, climbing a few more steps and grabbing the doll's silk sash. Carmen said. Her eyes were bulging as she stared over Judy's shoulder. "What?" Judy said. He glanced behind him just in time to see a giant plastic hand grab at his shirt collar. Effortlessly, the Dutch doll plucked Judy from her comrade's hoop skirt. She dangled Judy high above the ground. The spy kids were captured. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and stop there. Yeah, we're gonna end on a cliffhanger. It's gonna be like those old Batman 1960 cartoons. How you think, like how they're captured, and so the show ends on that cliffhanger and they ask a bunch of questions, and then they say, tune in sometime later, same time, same channel, blah blah blah. Either way, we're gonna end it on that cliffhanger. On that cliffhanger note, we'll be reading chapter 9 through 16. We'll be reading through chapters 9 through 16 tomorrow, or either that. We'll do a poll tomorrow. Either read the second half of this book, or read which one. Where are we at on this one? First off, yeah, so I'll be doing a poll tomorrow. Whether you guys want to hear the second half of Mall of the Universe, or rereading days 19 through 27 for Suicide Notes. But I warn you, if you're gonna pick that one, do note that it's gonna get a little bit. It's gonna be a more wilder ride than we've had. In the previous few parts. But also, before we end it here, I do want to show you guys a few things here that I've gotten recently. Alright? I did want to do this recently, but I keep forgetting to. So let me go ahead and move these things here, show you guys exactly what I got. You guys already know what two of the books are. Hey, Chuckle Conroy, calm down, okay? Maybe I'll watch that video that was just playing, maybe not. I don't know, but calm down. Anyway, So you guys know two of the books that I announced that was going to be coming at a later point in time. But I also want to, but I want to make sure you guys see exactly what I got going on here. So I'm going to show you guys the books that I got recently. Two was from the two that I showed I got from Walmart, and the rest of them I got from Amazon. So the first one is this book, The Best List by Lucy Foley. I did buy another one of her books recently titled The Paris Apartment, which is another book that's actually in this pile right here. So, yeah, so here's this book. We also have a book that I was interested in because it takes place during the early parts of World War II and beyond up to 1947. That be We Were the Lucky Ones. It's also a Hulu series as well. It even says so right there. Yep. So there's that. And on top of that, you also have the two Avatar books that I showed you guys. Yep. But yesterday, I think it was yesterday. One being the Chronicles of the Avatar books, The Rise of Kyoshi, which is technically the first book in the series that they've got going on. I'm going to be reading this book first, obviously, and then get the other three books that go along with this one. Because alongside the first book, I also got the latest book that has come out recently, and that be The Reckoning of Roku. So that'll be interesting if I do say so myself. On top of that, we also have the the sequel to a book that I read earlier, a few months back. You may or may not know this book, but the book in my possession right now in my hand is titled Good Girl, Bad Blood. If this sounds familiar, if this name looks familiar, it's because I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. This is the sequel to that book. We will read it in due time. Right now, I think we should still read some other stuff before I read this one. And on top of that, alongside alongside two other books with this one. Actually, I'm going to put these here on my bed and show you these as a whole. I probably already got spoiled by it, but I'll still show it to you anyway. We also got the first three Dune books that I'll be reading as well, and trust me, this book, you guys think this book might be the biggest book I have? That's probably the second biggest book I got, page-wise. Because the biggest book, to my knowledge, like the very biggest book that I have, is actually... Oh, I don't know if I can even get it. Because it's behind all this pile of books right here. But I'll just give you a hint. It is perhaps Stephen King's longest book he's ever written. That should give you a clue. But yes, those are all the books that I got. I'm looking forward to reading them. So coming soon. I will say most of those will be coming soon. But I want to read them first, and as soon as I'm done reading them, they'll be put on this stack. Depending on how soon it takes for me to read them. But in any case, yeah, those are the books that I bought recently. Looking forward to reading them. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for watching this the first half of Spy Kids Mall of the Universe. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll be doing a poll immediately after this. for tomorrow to see which book you guys would like for me to read for tomorrow between the two that I just read, that being Spy Kids and Suicide Notes. So, with that said, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, this is Forrest Walpole, signing off.